All right. Good afternoon and happy Wednesday. It is Lee Watts with the Academy of Creative Coaching, and welcome to our Mindfulness Cafe today. Today we have Coach Dion Mack. Dion is, I've known Dion for a little while and just been fascinated with her. Her knowledge of the coaching industry, and I've learned a few things about her as we were preparing for this mindfulness cafe. And Dion, welcome.
Lee, it's so good to be here. I was you fascinated. That is a big thing.
Yes, yes. Google can do a lot. So I was and I think also some of the fascination was I met you and you were so unassuming and calm and kind of quiet. And then when I go and Google you, I'm like, wow, she's like a rock star. And so I love just learning more about you. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Um,
Awesome.
some things that you've experienced and learned in the coaching industry. And we're going to start just really talking about your background in human resources. So tell me a little bit about how you got started with that. Was that your ideal career track and job, or how did that happen?
I tell you, Lee, absolutely not. Everything in my career has just been laid out for me more so than me making a decision and following that path. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's just kind of the way that it worked out. But I started out in HR um, because I was in college and I was going to school for finance, actually. I had said for a long time growing up, I wanted to be a lawyer. And then I woke up one day, I saw a commercial. I was like, no, I'm not going to go to the school that I said I was going to go to since like the fifth grade. I'm in the 11th or 12th grade at this point, and I see this commercial for a university. I'm like, I'm going to go there and major in finance. Came out of nowhere. I
Okay.
applied to one school.
Okay.
And, my cousin reaches out one day, and we're like 19 or so, 20. And she says, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. I'm taking a civil service test and I'm a bad test taker. Dion, can you go with me? And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. I'll go. I don't even know what it's for. I'm just doing it to support her. The
Hmm.
day comes, it's like 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning. It's raining. She doesn't show up. I drive 35 minutes out east to take this test. It's a civil service exam for working in the Department of Social Services. And I did that for a little while. I scored high. They called me for a job. I just decided to do it because it was good benefits and things like that, right? So after about a year of doing that, the way you move up in civil service is you take exams based off, what your credits are that, make more money or what have you. And there was one for a human rights investigator. I knew that I had enough credits in college at the time, so I was still in school. And I had no idea what it was, but I took the test. It's more money.
Right.
They called me maybe 2 months later, 3 months later. I scored very, very high. It was investigating discrimination in the county attorney's office out where I lived in New York. And so it was employment discrimination, housing discrimination, credit in public accommodations. And in that, I was partnered with a local university on diversity conference every year. And they reached out to me after about 2 years and said, we have a role and we want to know if you're interested. It was a diversity and affirmative action specialist position. And I was like, yeah, this would be awesome and great. This sounds very interesting. It's right up my alley. And that's kind of what got me into that space. So I started off on more of the compliance side, affirmative action, some diversity in academia. And then I decided I wanted to dip my toe in that corporate space and took a role at Prudential.
Yeah.
And I've been doing HR compliance, diversity and inclusion work ever since. That's going back, I guess, 25, 26 years now.
Yeah, yeah. I was watching or reading just for different companies and corporate America, and you have the background with academia, background with government, like just a wide variety of perspectives and experience.
Mhm.
So delighted that you can share with us today. So diversity, equity, and inclusion. And you've been doing in this area, like you said, for over 20 years. How have you seen things evolve
Mhm.
in that space? Because I know even in the past 3 years, I'm not even fully in it, but I've seen and heard how things have changed. So I know your
Mhm.
head is spinning, right?
This is one field that it goes through, and I guess this holds true for probably a lot of others, but there's cycles that just kind of somewhat repeat themselves. They expand each time. So when I got into this work, diversity was basically a euphemism for affirmative action and HR compliance work, right?
Mhm.
It was mostly focused on women and people of color, at least particularly when you're talking about diversity. It was women and people of color. And then they started adding in early some very limited focus on the LGBTQ community,
Mm.
diversity space.
Yeah.
Now, the HR compliance space was women, people of color, people with disabilities, and veterans, going back to the 1960s. Um, but it was still just very compliance driven. What are your numbers?
Yeah.
And built off of what they were doing in that affirmative action space. They started talking about diversity, and then you begin to hear conversations around, well, okay, you can do this work to bring people in, different people in, but if your environment isn't one where they can thrive, it's going to be a revolving door. So then
Mm.
inclusion became a topic in there, right?
Mhm.
And then every, 10 years or so, there will be an incident, whether it's George Floyd, whether you go, back to, um, oh gosh, I mean, it's been something every 5 or 10 years, right?
Right.
But
Exactly.
after every single one of those, you'll see a resurgence of we have to do unconscious bias training. So that became the big thing, unconscious bias, and how do we begin to get more awareness around what bias is and that we all have them and how to mitigate it. So then unconscious bias was the thing. And then it was like, oh, well, there's microaggressions. And now there's, belonging. And now with George Floyd, it's anti-racism. And it's great to see it evolve.
Yeah.
And, we're hearing the words equity in there, belonging, and all of those are important. They're interrelated, but they're kind of different.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's great. And I think there's space for everyone in it. I think the big thing, I think where the change is beginning to happen, and I'd like to see this more, is the talk around this diversity, equity, and inclusion work is not about the marginalized. It is about those that are marginalized, but how do you see that it's actually a shared experience for all of us?
Yes. 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 And that kind of brings me to kind of a quote that I've read of yours as I was looking you up, and you talked about the human centered approach, which I'm sure like 20 years ago we weren't using that term, and
Hmm.
how that is the game changer. So talk a little bit about that approach, how it's the game changer.
Sure. So, in doing this work for all this time, companies, and I've been in different industries, right? Whether it's academia, aerospace and defense, finance and insurance,
Wow.
automotive, um, they're all, I don't want to minimize the work at all, but at the most basic level is how do I, impact your workforce, your workplace, and your marketplace. And they're all doing some great best practices around talent attraction, talent management, developing their employees. You see companies doing sponsorship programs,
Yeah.
mentoring, things like that. And it's great. And there's some movement. But any company you talk to, they're going to say, I've been doing this work for decades now. And while we've had some diversity in our leadership, we see that we have employee resource groups, there's some level of engagement. We're still not seeing the change at the pace and the sustainability that we would like to.
Mm.
And I think the difference, or the thing that has been missing in that, or not being done as deeply, is how you engage and reach people at that individual level. Because inclusion is not a checklist or check the box thing. Like, if I do all these things, now my organization is inclusive. Check the box and it's done.
Yeah.
How inclusive or inclusivity is a dynamic that happens from moment to moment. In every second, you have an opportunity to either be
Wow.
inclusive or not. So, what are you doing at the individual level, at the leadership level, at the
Yes.
organizational level, to build awareness around how am I showing up? What are my thoughts, my emotions, and the behaviors that are coming as a result of that?
Yeah.
And how inclusive am I showing up in each moment, right? And so that's where coaching comes in, and helping
Yes.
folks to build that awareness and go deep internally to say, okay, let me look at, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? How am I responding to things? I can be talking to you right now and come across very inclusive. Then you can ask me something about some other topic, and I could say something totally marginalizing and exclusive. And it's like, okay, she was inclusive a minute ago. She's
Mm.
not now. And that's happening in every organization in every moment with every different individual within it. So finding ways to have that human engagement one-on-one to help people build their personal skills and awareness is what's going to me, change the game.
And that's that's the power of the coaching, I can't get past that, the point that you made about the inclusivity is moment to moment. It's every moment. And so that made it just so much more personal, and that
Mhm.
we can't, even as an employee in an organization, I can't just look at HR or whatever the department is, management, to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do. All of a sudden, when you said that, it just reminded me, like, what am I doing? As a
Mhm.
manager of my marketing team or whatever, how am I making sure that my language day to day, or how I pull the team together, or whatever it
Mhm.
is, that
Mhm.
I'm owning it. So I really appreciated how you brought that in. Um, so I want to talk about peer to peer coaching, um, and a little bit about exactly what that is, because when I think
Mhm.
of coaching, I do think of a person, a coach,
Mhm.
talking to their client, and
Mhm.
really helping them and coaching them through something. So when we talk about peer to peer coaching, what does that look like?
So peer-to-peer coaching is it's another aspect of coaching. It certainly is that one-on-one, and it can be group too, but one-on-one engaging and helping someone to work through a circumstance or situations, right? But the thing with the peer coaching is there's equality in status. So
Mm,
that eliminates some of that dynamic around the power dynamic, the hierarchy or rank element that can come into the conversation. When you're a client and you're talking to your coach, you kind of see them as, they're the expert, they're going to help me. But
yes,
in that peer coaching relationship, it's a reciprocal engagement where they're both focused on helping each other and being helped themselves.
yeah,
So there's a familiarity that can come across because your peer, there's that equality in status. They have a familiarity of the organization, the company's strategy and priorities at the time. So they have a different vantage point, and it just makes for I'm not going to say safer, but a different level of safety in that relationship. So there's more openness to vulnerability. It's an opportunity also for both of them, again, to help and be helped, and to practice what they're learning around coaching skills. So we're talking a few minutes ago about inclusivity is moment by moment things, so how you build that personal mastery. In that peer coaching relationship, you're able to practice your skills. Let's say if we're talking about inclusion coaching, practice how to be an inclusion coach or be inclusive in your coaching. And then you can get feedback from your peer and vice versa. That's happening on both sides. And so it's a really great development opportunity.
so in watching this happen, I'm visualizing all of this. Is there still like a, for lack of a better term, like a master coach that's making sure that the peer coaching is going?
So it's all in how you set it up, right? You could say, so I think about even like in my coach training, for example, we had peer coaching, and we had a lot of hours of peer coaching actually, but it was set up where there was group coaching. So a pod of like four of us, but again, we're all in the same stage in our training. So
Yeah,
we're peers, and we determined how to manage our time. So sometimes we would pick topics that we knew we were all studying at the time, and helping each other through it. Sometimes someone would say, you know what, I have a particular circumstance that I want to share with the group. And then we're all kind of helping them and offering our coaching. Then we had it set up where I had a peer coach. So one of my peers would be coaching me every week. And in that dynamic, they were always the coach. And
yeah.
then I would have a client where I was always the coach as well. Or you can set it up where, and I've done this voluntarily with some of my peers. Let's do some peer coaching, and this week I'm going to be the client. Next week you can be the client.
Got it.
Or we'll split it up and say, let's do an hour, 30 minutes I'm the client, 30 minutes you're the client. So
Yeah,
you really have flexibility in how you set it up.
yeah. And so, as people are training and getting their certifications and coaching, I would imagine this is a really great value, because
Oh my
you're
gosh, yes.
getting live training and learning your style.
You're
Right?
learning your style, and what's awesome is that you get to see others' styles as well. So, like particularly in that group coaching circumstance, you know, would have someone would say, "Okay, I have a situation," and we're all kind of listening, and we all get the opportunity to chime in and coach this person. I might have heard something like, "Okay, they just said this. I'm going to dig. That's where I'm going to dig in." And
Yes,
someone else would find something else that piqued their interest. I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about. Yeah, okay, that was a great question. That was a great catch. Everyone's style is different, so how they ask their powerful questions, maybe. So you get to learn from your peers, and it just helps to really build your coaching toolbox for sure.
absolutely. So, in your experience, and you have a lot of experience, have you seen that this is a part of of most curriculums and certification processes, the peer coaching, or is that something that's a little rare? Should everyone be looking for that when they're signing up for a certification?
So I'm probably a little biased. I think peer coaching is awesome, right? And coaching is something where you need the classroom time to learn the techniques and things like that, but then you have to have that space to practice it,
Yes,
and to practice it often. So to me, yes, every coach training program should have elements of peer coaching in it before you send folks off to do, to be coaches out on their own. I think there should absolutely be peer coaching in that. And then I'm also seeing organizations implementing peer coaching practices within them as well. And they've been doing that for quite some time. I think it's beginning to get more traction probably in the last 5 to 10 years, but I think it started first as an economical way of introducing coaching lower in an organization because for the most part coaching was something, particularly in that corporate setting, for your senior most executives, right? They
yeah,
would get assigned executive coaches. It can be a very expensive undertaking, but it's also so transformational that organizations have said, how can we bring it deeper into the organization? How do we get it for our mid-level leaders and high potentials? Oh, let's do peer coaching. And from what I have read and from my
yeah,
experiences, there have been mixed emotions around how effective that is. But I think the reason for that is because coaching itself is still, it's not advising, it's not consulting. It is really helping people. You believe that in coaching, folks have the answers within themselves. So you're helping them to find those answers that
yeah.
already exist within.
Mhm.
So it's about asking the right questions, not giving the advice and the answers. And so folks have to learn how to coach. So oftentimes you'd see organizations, we're going to implement a peer coaching program. How much are you investing, though, in teaching these individuals and these participants to be coaches before they go into this peer coaching relationship? So I think that is the element that we're beginning to see more folks investing in the coach training for, internally for their employees, not just, okay, well, we want to send folks to coach training because they want to start their own practices, but we know we want to send folks to coach training so that they can be internal coaches and or in whatever their roles are, they can learn how to implement coaching techniques into their leadership and natural engagement styles.
I that's fascinating to me. I was just really just thinking about the benefits of it from a student. But I'm also hearing you talk about it can also be a very strategic decision to incorporate this when you have an organization and just how you're thinking about your people and managing them and actually giving them the opportunity to get coaching because as you said in the past it's kind of been reserved for the elite at the
Mm-hmm.
top, but this kind of opens it up, and gives people the opportunity to coach again their peers and yeah, I that's very enlightening. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk. And I want to say one of the great things about the Academy of Creative Coaching, we do have peer coaching as part of our value add, and we want to emphasize that more because it's so needed. And like you said, really understanding your style, understanding before you let loose out there that you really are equipped to ask the powerful questions and
Mhm.
to really coach. So we're really happy to offer that. And I know with your work, kind of pivoting a little bit, with because you've done some work with Academy of Creative Coaching, with
I
coaching
love ACC
everyone. Yes.
and
And
coaching everyone, of course.
yes, yes, yes. And so BIPOC coaching and
Mhm.
why we need it, because you kind of brought that up again, again with there's some inequity in the coaching industry. And
Mhm.
so why is it that we actually even need some focus on BIPOC coaching in your opinion? Why can't everybody
Oh,
just
God,
do everything?
sure. So a couple of reasons. So first, again, coaching, right? So transformational, helps you to, build your awareness, come into tune with yourself and the way that you think and behave, and then take conscious choice over that. That within itself is amazing and awesome. But again, it's always been something that was reserved for your senior most leaders,
Mm,
those who have the money to invest in it. Um, and oftentimes the coaches themselves, the coaching industry is not the most diverse, right? So you have those who are receiving coaching, usually not the most diverse, and those who are doing the coaching themselves are not. And so now that coaching, one of the fastest growing industries, folks are realizing the benefits of coaching. How do we ensure though that as the leadership ranks in organizations are becoming more diverse. Companies are doing this diversity, equity, and inclusion work to try to diversify their leadership, diversify their workforce. So now you have this enhanced diversity on your teams and in your leadership. You're setting them up with coaches. Do these coaches understand the circumstances that these, people of color, for like BIPOC individuals, experience in the workplace? You know that our systems are built off of inequity, and the structures themselves are inequitable. How do we ensure that we have coaches that understand that, who know their blind spots, that know how to bring cultural context into the way that they engage with their clients? So building coaches who are inclusive themselves and helping to diversify the coaching industry, because while there aren't any hard and fast numbers, what we do know, at least anecdotally from what has been captured, less than 10% of at least certified coaches globally are people of color.
yeah, yeah,
And so you want to, and that's where Coaching for Everyone, I think their mission of wanting to increase the access to coaching, but then also to increase representation of BIPOC coaches, to
yeah,
me is so critical.
yeah. The access to coaching is really sometimes, because even me working with Coaching for Everyone and ACC, sometimes you just think about, okay, we need BIPOC coaches, got to get them certified, but the access to it is also really critical.
Mhm.
And having a mission to do that, I think, is very admirable. Going back to what you were saying, and we're going to wrap up in just a second about, can that coach, if it's not a BIPOC coach and you have, and you're trying to coach someone, I keep reading more and more about the trauma, the workplace trauma that BIPOC employees are enduring, um,
Mhm.
over the past, I'm sure it's happened for a long time, but the past
Mhm.
3 years have been really traumatic. And and then I also read, and I can only imagine, like, DEI professionals are
You get
really,
burnout.
oh my gosh, having such a hard time, and it's like, who can they talk to? Who can coach them? And that's why it's needed. This
Oh
is
my
need
gosh, absolutely. Your coaches need coaches. The BIPOC coaches and your BIPOC DEI practitioners need to have coaches themselves, because particularly if you're a person of color, let's just keep it to them. If you're a person of color in America, you see all that's happening. Let's take, since George Floyd. As a Black woman, and while we know that this impacted everyone who saw it because the whole world erupted, but as a Black woman, I looked at that and was like, okay, this isn't the first time we've heard I can't breathe, right? As humans, we're not meant to see one of our own losing their life in front of our eyes. And so we're not built for that as human beings. As a person of color, I know that this is, and as a Black woman, this has been happening. It's not new. And I know that every time I get into my car and leave to go somewhere, this is something that can happen to me. Well, not even when I leave, right? You can be sitting in your house watching TV, eating ice cream. You can be driving your car. You can be at church. You can be in the supermarket. Anywhere, we're not safe. So I'm dealing with that as an individual. And then I have to go into work and try to help others learn how to build awareness and sensitivity and around these topics. And sometimes that's hard, right? Because maybe I may not be in the space today
Right.
where I, I can respond compassionately to someone else's development because I'm dealing with my own trauma in what's happening around me. So who do I
Yeah.
have to go to help pour into me? That's
Yeah.
critical. And
Yes.
then, you talk about the trauma that you experience in the workplace yourself. I remember I was working in an organization and the intentions were absolutely great. I had a leader who was so unbelievably open and wanting to, how do I become more inclusive? And I want to understand the experience of people of color in the workplace. So Dion, I would love for you when, just when things happen, share with me, tell me your feelings or what have you. So, all right, I can absolutely do that because they wanted to learn and grow. And I remember going to this leader once and saying, okay, and I was working in HR. So I was hearing other things that were happening in the organization. And there was a senior leader that other employees were complaining about and being a bully. And then I had an incident with this person where I saw some of that behavior. So I went to my leader, who was CEO of the company, and said, I'm going to tell you about this particular circumstance where, this employee, this senior leader demonstrated these behaviors that we're hearing others talking about, showing up as a bully in the workplace. And I said, I'm telling you about it because you asked me to tell you these things, and because it may have happened on a Thursday or a Friday. And I was ruminating on that situation all weekend, Lee. I mean, I could
Mhm.
not get that engagement or interaction out of my head.
Yeah.
And after, to the point where my family was like, Dion, you never again let someone do that to you, and you can't let it take over you the way there's. It just co-opted my entire being, and in doing that, I realized I was like, okay, I've never been bullied before by anyone.
Mhm.
I don't like it. I
Right.
realized I don't like it,
Yeah.
and then as a Black woman, it hit me like, okay, not only do I not like it because bullying isn't good, but I'm not ever going to I'm not going to allow anyone to treat me this way. But I'm even more sensitive to the fact that I'm not going to let a white person
Yeah.
treat me that way, right? Because I realized that behavior that they were exhibiting was what had been utilized for centuries,
Yeah.
right? Because what it was like breaking me down till they got their way, right? And I was like, yeah, no, that I will not let anyone do that, but I'm definitely not going to let someone, who's not like me
Right.
do that to me. And I raised that situation to the leader, and we talked about it because she wanted again to know the BIPOC thought process, right?
Right.
So as I'm telling her about it, she was like, "Oh my gosh, very sensitive to it. Oh, Dion, yeah, okay. Do you want me to set up some time for you to get some coaching around this?" So, well, I don't think I really need coaching around it. I'm pretty aware of what happened. I've processed my thoughts, but I'm sharing it with you because you wanted to know. Well, but again, I'm also open to coaching. If you're offering me coaching, I'll take the coaching. They set me up with a male coach from Europe, non-BIPOC, right? Wonderful man, right? So I'm like, I'll take the free coaching, but what in the world is he going to be able to talk to me about in
Right.
France? One, he's not American. He's not a person of color. Like, there was just so many different things where he was not going to be able to relate. Great coach, though. So I said, I'll go to the sessions because, but it's not going to serve the purpose that you think it's going to serve.
Right.
And it ended up turning out to where I was coaching him around inclusion coaching, right? So, and again, she was very, very well meaning. But you want to talk about trauma? Okay, first my incident with the first
Yes.
leader, and
Yes.
then going to someone and like, oh, well, here, go talk to. Yeah,
Yes.
big miss here. Very, very, very big miss, but good intentions, right?
Right.
And so That to me is a perfect example of why.
Yes, that was a great case study. Yes, of why. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That was great. Well, thank you so much. I've enjoyed our conversation today. We've steadily had people watching and liking and all of that our broadcast today. So I'm assuming that other people found it helpful as well. I really enjoyed learning more about peer to peer coaching and the benefits, not only from an individual level, but also from a company level,
Mhm.
and just the strategy and probably, I'm sure, with retention. We know that everyone is struggling with retention right now,
Absolutely.
and um, and that was like if you're thinking about how to retain your talent, you should be thinking about incorporating.
Absolutely. Peer coaching, it helps to, again, build leadership skills, build connection in the organization. You don't know who knows who and who knows what. So it's an opportunity to build your network. Um, and again, it's an opportunity to get to practice those coaching skills, to get feedback. I think it's a great way for organizations to drive change and that human centered approach in driving change in their
Yes,
organizations,
yes,
helping folks to build from a DEI perspective, inclusion mastery, a mindset around how do I become aware and show up more inclusively. All of that, I think, is something that can be enhanced through peer coaching for sure.
yeah, yep. Learned a lot today, so thank you so much. Thank you, thank
Thank you for having me and for creating this space for us to talk around these great topics.
Yes, absolutely. And so, for those of you who are watching, you will definitely be hearing more about our peer coaching program and benefits and value in our certification program. So, if you're interested and you're looking for certification or you are wanting just some more education, we have those options available for you. And I kind of want to do it even for myself because I'm like, it's a great mirror. It's just
It can
like
be accountability partner. I think everyone should have a peer coach.
yes,
Everyone.
yes, yes, yes. So I think it's just a great learning opportunity. So all right. Well, thank you so much. And you all have a wonderful rest of the week. And again, thank you so much, Coach Diane. I mean,
Thank you,
Dion.
Lee.
Lord Jesus. Dion.
Neon, Diane. It was just me and you, so I knew who you were talking to.
All right. All right.
You have a
Thanks.
good one.
Have a good one.